Hello, welcome to 3 more years worth of sketchbooks. The sequel to the video no one expected. I'm recording this audio after recording the video, so I go by the pages relatively fast because there's a lot to cover. So keep that in mind. I'm just kind of adding this in as a sort of post-recording podcast to fill in the video itself, and also because I wanted to talk about some of the things I learned about myself and art, looking at these and making these throughout these past 3 years. The first video is in the description. It's pretty bad, but if you want to watch it, I'm guessing the continuity between the growth is probably good and enjoyable to experience. This sketchbook was I started it roughly around mid 2018 to maybe late 2018. Last video, it ends at roughly early to mid 2018, and there was a lot of that final sketchbook that actually I used, especially here at the start of these and through these right now. These are some Inktovers I did, and the first half of these Inktovers was actually in that sketchbook, but I couldn't find it. They're long lost in a move in many years. One thing that's interesting, I think, about my art looking back from the perspective of me right now is how there's a lot of things that I didn't know. I'd say that these 3 years go through, ironically, maybe 3 stages. One which is reminiscent of the older sketchbooks from the past video that look very I want to say blobby. There's something about it that's very loose, and sometimes it works pretty well. I think this one looks pretty nice, but sometimes it makes it look out of focus and weird, and maybe not out of focus, but it looks strange. This is a good example of shit that looks bad because it lacks form. It lacks you can tell it lacks a certain diligence and planning, but again, sometimes it works out well. And I think that halfway through these 3 years, I kind of went really hard the opposite way, where I was really rigid with the way I worked around anatomy and just overall drawing in general. I definitely strictened up, but funnily enough, I think that by the end of it, I loosen up a lot again, and I think that a lot of the problems you see at the start, ironically, of these sketchbooks kind of comes back later on, but also with maybe some of the qualities that are better from the rigid half of it. So basically it fluctuates, it goes up and down with rigidness. Maybe that's a little weird and amorphous to explain, but that's the way I was thinking about it. Moving on, I think the question to ask yourself when you're, everybody who's an artist is bound to end up having something at least akin to a sketchbook in some ways, or just a backlog of work that seems kind of useless. I for one think that I see a lot of artists that get to sell their sketchbooks, and they're very valuable. You know, they feel like very valuable pieces of their catalog as artists. Now, other people might feel differently about my work, but I think my sketchbooks are fairly, um, you know, not great. I think they're kind of bad sometimes. Um, in content. I wouldn't sell you this and expect you to be satisfied with what you get, right? Like maybe there's like a couple drawings that are good, but I don't know. I feel like yeah, and maybe it's just like a lack of experience. Yeah, maybe I'm not at a point where I could show something of worth with sketchbooks or whatever. But enough of that. Um, I think that even though it's I might not be super crazy about these. Um, I think it's worth it to stay, to keep them and to record them in a sense. Because while the individual pieces might not be really worth that much, the overall growth and the overall like journey of it all, I think it's good. I think there's a value to seeing someone grow as an artist, and change and have weird priorities that vary and change and stuff like that. Um, so I would invite you all to do the same, to have something that's essentially a sketchbook where you can just draw whatever or write whatever, um, and not just see it as something to throw away, but maybe like find ways to like use it for future inspiration or future work or just a show, because somebody out there hopefully is interested. um, I think there's something satisfying and validating about that when you're an artist. um, yeah, we're reaching the end of the first sketchbook here. Sketchbook probably ends at around 2019. Yeah. Little tip of advice is when you see a character that was eventually the Smash Brothers DLC character, you can kind of like mentally time note it, make a mental timestamp of the chronology of it all, based on whenever they came out or were announced or whatever. But yeah, out of the sketchbooks, if I had to rank them, this is probably the weakest one. Again, it feels really blobby and weird and almost like of a different era. Um, but yeah, a lot of characters that I'll return to though. A lot of these characters right here I'm showing, I do kind of eventually go back to them and play around with some of their ideas too, which is neat. So, I kind of mentioned it, but at around the start of the next sketchbook, or somewhere in it, I kind of develop more of a strict approach to anatomy than the one I had before. Before, it was very much like a just kind of go with it attitude, which I think is a good way to approach drawing overall. Just kind of like don't have too many rules, so you can just kind of break everything that would have been a rule. It allows you to like make, I don't know, it allows you to grow more. I feel it's easier to get stuck in like your own rules and your own self-made dogma. But I think it's a lot more important to just be flexible, with your art. Be reciprocate to change. I know that for a fact that I myself am very inspired by the things I watch. Maybe I'll watch something, and the way something is drawn, or the way something is the way some certain things are approached will kind of completely change the way I draw from then on. A good example is gnosis. At a certain point, the way I draw gnosis completely changes, and it very much is correlated to things I was watching and things I liked at the time. And to this day, it never kind of goes back. Same with like eyes and overall like facial structure and stuff like that. But I think anatomy is like probably one of the most obvious ones. Now, I think that the approach I was taking works, and it works relatively well. And I had been doing it for a long time. But when I went into the more rigid forms, it's kind of hard to describe, especially since I don't think we're there yet in the sketchbooks. But just bear with me, okay? Once I started to like be a little more studious, because it came from trying to study more from like more contemporary artists and classical artists and stuff like that, and trying to approach anatomy and drawing overall the way they did. So it came from a good place of heart, I think. It came from a place of genuinely wanting to improve. But it's important to not get bogged down, and it's important to be able to learn from it, grow, get better, and allow your own ego to kind of like let those things go by and change. It's weird. It's like you have to like give up certain things sometimes that you are familiar with, so you can go into uncharted waters. But yeah, some of these are pretty bad. But it was a fact that I was trying to like learn new things. I think it's important to make bad things that you go, oh man, that looked bad. But as long as you're trying to do something unique, that's fine. I feel like I'm saying a lot of nothing. What do you feel, viewer? What do you feel like I'm saying? Let's see here, my handy dandy list of things. Why I prefer drawing physically. Well, when I was young, it was very interesting. And when I was not so young either, or when I was not so young too, when I bought my tablet, I must have been like 17 or so when I finally was able to buy my tablet. I hated it. I hated drawing on my tablet. It was really uncomfortable, and it was bad. The only way I drew digitally before then was through a mouse, and even that I obviously I understood it was bad because it's through a mouse and the MS Paint and shit. But I was really disappointed that the experience of drawing on a tablet wasn't one-to-one to paper, because I felt like my art just wasn't nearly as good. And I still feel that way to some extent, I prefer drawing physically. There's something very freeing about it. But also, I guess like there's a lot to appreciate out of drawing digitally too. But anyway, I don't know. I just I feel like drawing physically is just really nice. It's very satisfying. Oh, well, it's also interesting too, because like I feel like, especially with animations and stuff like that, there was a point where I would draw a certain way, and then when I would animate, I would immediately unconsciously just completely shift an art style. And obviously that was more of an animation thing, but I think it also has to do with digital. I don't know if I would have animated that way if I was animating physically. But I think I've reached the point that I feel very comfortable with both, because I feel like I draw relatively the same, either physically or digitally. Though I'd still say that like physically I have a bit more control over what I actually want. Um, but it's interesting. It's interesting that eventually these two things kind of melded together, even though they felt so different at the start. Um, Something else I do a lot here, and you can kind of see it as we go here. I like to storyboard and just kind of lay out panels a lot physically too. I think that as if you're making comics or you're animating and stuff like that, I think it's very easy to assume that you should go into just digital mode immediately, since like the final product will be made digitally. But I believe there's a lot to gain from kind of trying to get those original concepts, maybe designs, concepts, and just overall like visuals more implanted and more like solidified in a more traditional sense. I definitely feel that if I were to just make everything without storyboarding and stuff like that physically, I'd lose a lot of what I value in the things I do. Especially in the animations, I feel like I'd lose a lot of. I mean, not to say that I have it, but like I feel like a lot of times, I don't know. It's a good testing ground, right? It's a good testing ground for weird things, for weird ideas or concepts that you might not be, good enough yet to tackle digitally, or tackle more directly, without, being able to just make those mistakes and look back at them through the physical media. Because I guess you could do it if you just had like a really big canvas and you started just like doing things and looking back at them. But I don't know, having it in pages solidifies it a little more. It kind of makes the image a little more vivid. We're reaching roughly the midway point right about now. Not of the sketchbooks overall. I guess we kind of are, because this is like the end of the sketchbook, but of the video. And frankly, I've run out of things to say that I wrote down. So I guess I'll just react to it a little more directly, kind of like the old one. I think maybe that's a little more interesting too. At that time, I was getting into Fire Emblem. That's why I drew Edelgard so much back there. You probably saw it, or don't care. That's a weird Mario. Man, it's fun to see the really just dumb shit you come up with. It's either like the most weird, like bizarre, random, ugly thing, something decent that you actually like, or just like a drawing of a face. That's kind of all you get with these sketchbooks. It's kind of funny. Oh, look at that, Yamato. Look at me flexing those katakana skills. Wow, what a Chad. Some more storyboards here. A lot of these storyboards, it's interesting. Actually, I think it was the second, by the end of the second one, I noticed that I had storyboards for cartoons or animations that I made that came out relatively recent to like when this video is coming up, right? Like 6 months ago, I put out an animation of Shin Megami Tensei thing, but it was interesting to see that, I basically storyboarded that like 2 years ago, or 2 years before it was released, almost. Um, Kind of goes to show how long these things take, or can take if you're not very good at managing your time. Um, so who knows? Maybe some of these will actually come to fruition and not be forgotten projects that I languish in. This little character in particular, I'm fairly fond of. This kind of like the girl with short hair, um, and like her story with these animals and things. I'd like to. That's a good one, but it's definitely one of the weirder ones to actually make into something real. None of the things I'd like to make. A lot of inside jokes, a lot of weird inside jokes with friends here, that nobody else will get, but hopefully it makes for decent enough drawings. It's a shame the lighting doesn't help the readability of a lot of this stuff. I feel like for the most part it reads decently. Maybe I'll go ahead and like make the contrast a little stronger so it's a little easier to actually see. But yeah, it's a shame. I don't draw these with the intention of them being seen. So a lot of the time they're very light and very, sparse and weird and not complete. So seeing through them like this kind of shows that it's not a very complete or readable image, but hopefully it's readable enough, at least when it counts. Um, Went quiet there for a bit. How have you been? How how's things going, eh? How things been? Oh, you can't really read those legs. I kind of like those legs, but you can't really see them that well. Again, shame about the light there. I think we drop more into fan art from now on. For some reason, I just kind of devolved into that. A lot of weird arms fan art. Great character designs in that game. Really fun. Really fun stuff. Same with Splatoon and shit like that. Some of these Splatoon drawings are really fucking odd. Arms ones are generally good, I think, though. This must have been roughly early 2020, yeah. So this is like at the start of the pandemic, which I think for some reason it was like one of the better times for me, drawing wise. Maybe it was just like the free time. Just kind of allowed me to draw more. I do feel like I just dust off the little sketchbook more often than not now. But yeah, I think the pandemic was an interesting time to delve into drawing and stuff like that a little more. Just pages of text. That's how you know. A lot of that too, honestly, for what it is. Ooh, some Gundam memes. This is about the time the nose gets a little more obvious. So I very much got inspired by like the way Gundam draws noses for a while, but it kind of gets replaced for the way a lot of other robot anime kind of do it, like Ideon and stuff. It's a similar idea of like overshading the nose. Um, it's just a matter of like what angle you choose to do it from. Um, but that's kind of what I was saying. It's part of things like that, where it was more of like a interesting, weird technique that I saw somewhere and I thought it was cool, are kind of the kinds of things that make you kind of break mold of a lot of the stricter rules you have. So I think that's a big part of the fun of drawing is kind of giving up. If you've seen before, then I don't really draw noses like that before this part. And it kind of starts to like mix into the way I drew more elegantly as time goes by. But yeah, reaching the end of this one too now. I believe this was the third one, so this means the next one is the last one. No? Yes, no, maybe so. Perhaps not. Perhaps there's a couple more left, actually. Yeah, I believe there's 2 more left. I think this is probably one of the better ones. I feel like a lot of these drawings, I don't know, it was like a sweet spot of coming out of feeling a little stagnant into learning a lot of fun stuff. And I feel like it resulted in some more unique looking stuff. Yeah, a lot of these I still kind of like for what they are, but I can vividly remember them, more than anything, them being really easy to make. It being really easy to make these, just being, you're just kind of being pushed by wanting to learn and try out new things. So, similar to how I was talking about how I went through like phases and stuff like that, I think watching these reminded me that there was a lot of stuff that I used to do that I don't know if I can replicate them as well anymore, which is a weird feeling because 3 years really isn't that much, especially if you've been drawing for a long time. But it's interesting to think about that even in that short amount of time, maybe you've kind of forgotten some things. I learned a lot, but I do think some of that looseness has kind of like been hard to relearn. I think it's good though. I think it's good to. It's very much like learning a language or anything really. You kind of have to have some time to forget and relearn, and rediscover things. It's very visually obvious here too that I kind of switched from drawing things a lot more rounder to a lot more sharper. I feel like everything's like weirdly polygonal, you know. It's interesting. It's interesting to think about. Like how a lot of this is like just trying to remake a certain anime style and stuff like that. That's kind of, I mean, I already mentioned the Gundam thing, but like it is what I kind of like about anime so much is its variety of style is really good, I find. There's always something to learn, it seems. Dead Pepe. Holy shit. A lot of these look weird. But I think I was going through like a weird slump through these two. I think this is when I kind of started to realize that like I was unlearning some things or learning a lot of some things, and then I had unlearned some other things. Kind of forcing myself to go back. It's interesting. Camille. Oh, here's another big, like fucking 10-page off the cuff idea for a relatively complete story. Crazy how that works, isn't it? You know, when you try to make something, it just won't come out. But some days you just kind of have ideas and things kind of come out on their own, and you get like full stories like that. I like the stories particularly because it made me learn how to draw old people. This one's also funny because it made me draw a funny monkey. A lot more cartoony designs here. I think I was trying to learn how to draw like the Robin Hood movie from Disney and stuff like that. Or kind of capture that appeal. That's something that well, it's a lot of things have that. It's like that weird appeal that's like hard to point your finger to. That movie's particularly good. It's like its designs are like just really, really, really enjoyable to look at. Coming up at the end of this one here. Yeah, overall I say this is probably my favorite sketchbook of all of them. Something about it that feels like a transition period, which is really, I like it. It's nice. I feel like I drew a lot of fun stuff. I feel like I was getting like an interesting footing into how I want things to look. And maybe even a little better than the last one. I feel like the last one's been a bit of a struggle. Part of why I even thought of making the videos, because I was kind of looking at it and being like, I don't know, something feels missing, you know? But yeah, it's kind of reacted live since it's the last one and all. Yeah, a lot of these feel like trying to imitate again things I saw and not just kind of not being able to grasp it as well to me. Yeah, these faces too is just like something feels a little off about them. It's like I'm too tied, too married to some of my ideas. I'm just kind of want to like escape it a bit. I feel like I get my footing back a little bit in time. I feel like a good way to, especially if you're like a person that draws a lot of people, a good way to like loosen up your style is to um, draw more, almost like cartoonify people, like draw more caricatures of people. And maybe not like super, cartoony caricatures, but like there's a lot of little things that you get when you draw a real human being and not just the character design that can kind of like fit things into place a little nicer. It's almost like a test of like the things you've been practicing while drawing from imagination, and it suddenly everything makes a lot more sense. It's a nice like refresher. One thing that you might notice is that I rarely draw complete shots of entire bodies. I kind of just cut it off with the legs, and that's been something that has been. I feel like I used to be relatively okay at drawing legs and feet, but it's kind of that's been recently. It's something I've learned that I unlearned. So I don't know. Maybe in the next 3 years, it'll just be 3 years worth of legs and feet. Who knows? I went back there because like I thought the pages were like stuck or something. Yeah, it's fairly recent stuff. It's getting out of the realm of nostalgic and more into the realm of, oh shit, I drew this like the other day. Oh yeah, this is real recent. Well, I guess might as well conclude. These 3 years have been pretty great, I find, for me, learning wise. Obviously, I had, mixed thoughts about growing or forgetting things and unlearning things or whatever, but I think if I look at the start of these and I look at the current times, I'm pretty proud in how much I've grown. And I feel like that was basically that was probably the same sentiment I had. 3 years is a long time, but it's also not that long, as I mentioned. It is, though, long enough to change, especially in the realm of arts and stuff like that. Long enough to make a lot of mistakes and grow from them. But it's good. It's exciting. It's fun. It's fun to go back and then go to the current times and realize that you have kind of gotten better, or at least that you've done a lot, that you've had better times and worse times, and that it all adds up to like the person you are now, and that it'll probably add up to like future years too, hopefully. See, there's that kind of like weird looseness too. I feel like a lot of these I don't even structure the face nearly as much as I used to. I just kind of go. But in many ways it's still rigid in many ways. I obviously have like a playbook of things I follow. Well, that's was pretty much the end of it. This is like a week ago or so, a couple weeks ago maybe. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. And I hope you also can look back at your art if you make any, and maybe go back and realize that you've grown a little bit. It's a good feeling to do so every now and then. Hopefully, in 3 years, I can show you some more stuff, and hopefully, I'll grow a lot too, and feel proud of that too. Thank you for watching.